name is Stephanie Podine, and this week for our PowerPoint presentation assignment, we were tasked with finding an agency and a public agency that really we need to identify something that's going on with it that needs to be changed. So for this week, my PowerPoint is going to be on the Environmental Protection Agency. And the Environmental Protection Agency has come under a lot of scrutiny lately, really due to corruption for the agency at its topmost level. It has really kind of eroded the image of the EPA for the public. So this PowerPoint presentation is going to go a little bit into how can we create faith in the EPA's bureaucracy again. So let's go ahead and get started. The EPA has a long-standing history of about 50 years old. Basically, the EPA was created under the Nixon administration and charged with protecting people and the environment. So under the Nixon administration, there was a number of different environmental health aspects that were going on, as far as everything you were talking about pollution from cars, from industries, manufacturing plants, pollution in the waters, air pollution, industrial waste and such. So the EPA was created out of the need to protect the American public from some of the byproducts that were going on from industry, oil, gas, fossil fuel, etc. So the changes that were needed in that area were basically led to the Congress being able to have the agency be more of a regulatory agency, in which it created a bureaucracy that basically was to regulate the laws that Congress was able to pass, such as the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act. And so the EPA, it was its job to basically put forth the regulatory sanctions that needed to be put in place to keep these industries in check, keep these private corporations in check, and really create a standard for environmental protection. So the problem, though, is when you create a bureaucracy whose intention is to keep businesses in check, so to speak, in order for the good of the American public, you create an agency that has a lot of power. And so the bureaucracy that was set up really kind of created a system in which, as we'll talk about in a little bit, has a nature to be set up that the top-down approach is a very powerful approach in the hierarchy of things. So when you have a person that is sectored off into each department, such as the EPA has different departments for their environmental regulations, such as a department that deals all with water issues, a department that deals with all the clean air issues. You create very segmented departments, but all have a hierarchy in which each department then has a supervisor and you work its way up. But towards the top, these officials are actually elected, not elected by the public, but I guess you could say more appointed, and they're appointed by the president. So due to recent issues with several of the top elected officials by the president in previous years, or top appointed positions by presidents in previous years, we've had several issues of corruption. Everything from destroying emails and possible files that were supposed to be, a bit sketchy, to say the least, that would, paint different presidential campaigns in a different light, that would have not brought information to the public that maybe it should have. And we've had recently a scandal going on with the current EPA, that Trump has supported, that is having, overspending issues as well as lack of oversight in that area. So definitely some changes are needed in the bureaucracy of the EPA, cleaning up of the corruption of this leadership, and just, reinforcing some of these elements of the bureaucracy that are not working and how we can change that, because the idea of the bureaucracy is not necessarily the issue. It's more of some of these elements that are put into place that has created a system in which it's hard to change, and the oversight is not necessarily there. So the system of checks and balances kind of gets a little lost in the process and is not as strong as it should be. So basically, to reinstate this public trust in the EPA, the bureaucracy needs a serious makeover. So basically, the three themes that I'm going with as far as ideas in order to change this is to challenge the theory of bureaucracy in general. So we'll talk a little bit about Weber in the next slide. And so this idea of your bureaucracy, is it a good one? Is it an important one? We've talked about, bureaucracy is important and has its function and works very well in certain circumstances, and elements of it work very well in certain circumstances. And so for the EPA, there is certain elements of the bureaucracy that works very well. The divisions of labor we'll talk about. When people are specialized, such as knowing their environmental, health codes, the regulatory laws, knowing, biology and natural resources, these people are very intelligent and help us to, obtain the mission and the goals of the EPA. And being an older organization, not terribly old, but, almost 50 years old, some of those different departments are quite specialized. And so that could be a very good thing. But the commitment to its mission and goals and being, a huge organization where it's come to be as it is today, these mission and goals need to be revisited. So because we've kind of lost track of what the overarching mission and goals is to protect the environment and protect, the public health, is it really living up to these mission and goals? And if it isn't, and since, it's, I guess you could say, its image has come under attack lately, why is that? What can we do to protect, the American public and, the environment and really create a system in which, the EPA is doing its job? And so this brings, the efficiency of the EPA into question. And really, perhaps a public campaign to create awareness and support for these, issues needs to be done. So let's talk a little bit more about the theory of bureaucracy and efficiency, and then we'll kind of talk about, a couple of the different theorists that play a part into these core elements of public administration. So as mentioned earlier, Weber is huge. Obviously, Weber's theory of bureaucracy is one of the most popular themes of studying organizations. So he really identified the legitimate use of power and authority, power being the ability to maybe ask people, to do things and get them to do it. And then the legitimacy behind it is that people, regard this power as legitimate and so obey the orders. And so that top-down approach is, created in a structure like the EPA, in which, these different departments have supervisors, and that things get escalated, and then they go all the way up to these top officials. And so when we discuss Weber's principles of bureaucracy, his 6 characteristics of bureaucracy, it's really important to understand that they're not all bad. So sometimes we question bureaucracy, and it's good, it's bad, what's good about it, what's bad about it. The EPA really has some things or some characteristics of bureaucracy that is really working well. So, first and foremost, the division of labor. So when people are specialized, as I mentioned earlier, having a specialization in environmental, politics, environmental law, biology, natural resources, ecology, knowing, the science of this all, these are very important skill sets that it's important to have different departments that address these different, topics and these different needs of study. It's kind of hard to have everybody do everything at once, and so it is important to have this divisions of labor. But, when you have such divisions, people are separated from others, and so perhaps, the people who are working on the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, don't really speak to each other as much. So when they're trying to regulate a private business that's maybe defying some of these laws, maybe the discussion isn't there amongst those departments, and there creates a bit of a backlash, maybe because the private business is not able to, feel like it's getting a fair shake, or vice versa, where some people are letting them go and other people, are keeping them more in check. So there might be an inconsistency in the way that they're, monitoring these regulations or enforcing these regulations. So that's that's one element of, Weber's theory of bureaucracy that needs to be revisited for the EPA. In addition, as I mentioned, the hierarchy of an organization, which is another principle and characteristic of bureaucracy, according to Weber, maybe need to be revisited. When you have top officials that are under, intense scrutiny, and at least 3 in the last 20 years, if not more, have come under, intense, accusations of corruption. There's something wrong there. We've had corruption a lot in politics, but public agencies really need to be held to a higher standard. So we need to revisit that. So Graham T. Ellison also talked about whether or not public and private management, are they fundamentally like, or, are they in all unimportant aspects alike, so to speak? So basically what he was trying to say from there, sorry if I confused you, but Trump, for example, President Trump, our current president, has mentioned whether or not the EPA should be, some of what they do should be outsourced. So that's also an important aspect to think about is some of our public agencies, such as the Environmental Protection Agency, is it doing its job? Is it possible to incorporate some of the elements of what private businesses do in how the EPA is run? Would that help increase, communication between departments? Would it help alleviate some of the problems in the hierarchy? Would it help improve, some of the rules and regulations, or would it make things worse? So that was just one thing I was thinking about when I was looking at the change of this organization and seeing how that would go. So basically, the challenges for the EPA kind of boil down to what we should keep and what we should change. So in my opinion, skilled divisions of labor we should keep. The impersonality, of a bureaucracy we should keep, making it fair for everyone to get a job there. The rules, the regulations, all of that is good. We should keep that. And the overarching, mission of the EPA is, it's phenomenal. There was a reason why the EPA was started. There was a reason why the EPA has grown to be what it is today, because of the need of it for the American public and the environment. And so those parts we should keep. So we should definitely, though, decide on what we should change. And so, the ability for these top officials to get away with as much as they're doing really stresses that there's problems going on in this organization. So there needs to be a better set of checks and balances. The theory of the bureaucracy does lend itself to kind of foreshadow, so to speak, that bureaucracy is innate, imperfect. And really, certain bureaucracies show that and show their true colors more than others. So why is that? What should we do in order to make, a more efficient bureaucracy? Because not all of it is bad. It's just basically trying to look and pinpoint the stuff that we can change and changing that so that it can be more efficient. And so, again, how does that fall into, officials being appointed by the president? If we're having trouble with the top officials, not really talking too much about the, the middle and the lower officials, is that because there's some type of, politics going on there? And so that needs to be revisited as well. And then in conclusion, how do we really change bureaucracies? So this PowerPoint just really elicits that there is change need to be had, or there is change needed in the EPA. And so basically, in my opinion, there is going to be a certain amount of pushback with institutions such as the EPA. So perhaps a bit more oversight, a bit more, public support for oversight and public support for pushing to have some of these changes occur might, help to influence, the current presidential administration to kind of instill some of these, checks and balances and to change their way of handling the bureaucracy and how much power they have, how much power the Congress has given them, and maybe look into that. So I hope you've enjoyed this PowerPoint presentation, and look forward to reading the rest of yours. Sorry this one was a little bit long, but hope you learned a little bit more about the EPA and kind of what's going on with it and the changes that might happen. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.